Hello, welcome today to the Christian Construction Podcast. We're here with Pastor Andy Wells, and we're going to talk today about how you can serve your generation. All right, welcome back today. I'm here. My name is Michael Lindsay. I'm here with Brother Keith Norman. Brother Keith, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Brother Michael.
Amen.
How you doing?
Amen. Praise the Lord. Glad that you're here with us again. Brother Keith, we don't know where Gabe and Matt are. We have been abandoned, evidently, for several episodes now. So
They're actually doing the responsible thing. They're at work.
Well, somebody's got to tithe and pay us, right?
Right. So
Well,
I'm actually the one. I'm actually the one without excuse here. So.
It's good to have our friend, Pastor Andy Wells.
Well, it's good to be here, Melvin. Thank you for allowing us to come on. I was in a real important meeting the other day, and this kid comes punching through my people and says, "Hey, Mister, hey, Mister, would you be on my show? Hey, Mister, will you be on my show?" And I said, "Hey, have your people get a hold of my people, and we'll see if we can't work it out." And so, good to be here, Brother Melvin.
Amen. Amen. Well, welcome to the Higher Grounds Podcast. No, thank you for tuning in. We love Brother Andy. He's great. Love him. And appreciate you coming. This is Revival Week. If you're probably seeing this, it could be sometime in February you're seeing this. And we're in the middle of our January revival meeting. Brother Voles has preached for us. Brother Mullins is preaching this week. Brother Chad Watson, Brother Jeff Ledbetter.
Do I get to preach this week?
No.
Okay.
So the good thing is you get to take it easy. Right?
Well, what about that? This is the Christian Construction Podcast, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
What are we building?
Christians.
I was going to bring my hammers, but I understand y'all only use metric hammers, and so I don't have metric hammers. I only have standard hammers. And Keith, right?
Yes, sir.
K-E-I. Why do you even put the I in there?
Well, that's just how what the
forget
birth,
it. Go ahead,
birth
Brother
certificate
Melvin.
says.
This is the righteous rant portion of the Higher
That's
Grounds
exactly
Podcast.
right.
So,
I was told I couldn't do that.
Yeah, we can't do that. We get us all in trouble, kicked off. This is a ministry of the Anchor Baptist Church. No, I'm kidding. No, the Love Valley Baptist Church here in Kings Mountain, North Carolina. And we appreciate our pastor, Barry Philbeck, letting us do this. And this may be the last episode.
Looks like he just stepped out of a Marine Corps recruiter magazine. The finest man in the world in patent leather shoes.
That's the truth.
It's the truth.
He really is.
That's exactly right.
They ain't a state trooper in North Carolina. Got better shoes than my pastor.
I guarantee you that's
You
right.
better believe it.
Well, they don't look as good anyway. They may be better shoes, but they don't look as good.
His are the shiniest and the nicest looking. Oh, Lord. Well, this is what we're going to do today. This is a ministry of the Love Valley Baptist Church, Kings Mountain, North Carolina. Our pastor is Barry Philbeck. And what we do want to do is remind you, as we always do, to tune in to Higher Grounds. And
Here we are.
with the Higher Grounds man, all right? And we're working on trying to get Brother Stephen Aldridge by. He's so busy.
So he says.
Well, I was going to say he's so important. Not so sure. Don't want to lie.
I think he's on church discipline's what I think.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
I heard he was.
I think that's
I heard
what
he was.
the problem is.
So anyway, we appreciate you coming by. Preacher, appreciate you coming by, taking time to drive down.
Man,
this
it's good to
part
be
of the
here.
meeting.
It really is good to be here.
You and I go back about, about 12, maybe 13 years.
Yes, sir. And
we
then you
started-
tried to kill me this year.
I did. And almost was successful.
Yeah.
I was worried.
You think you were worried?
I didn't say I was worried, but I thought I was worried.
I'm telling you.
I didn't tell anybody else that, though. I want them to think I was cold.
Now, here I am. I'm 54 years old, and I'm playing basketball with this hoodlum, and he decides to play hockey and puts me on my head through the concrete
Never
floor.
touched him. Never touched him.
Yeah, that's what they all say. Anyway, it's good
So
to be here,
I've known you
Melvin.
for a long time. We started by our church youth group,
Right.
coming down to youth camp, and being a part of all of the Galilee Baptist teen camps. Which if you're looking for a youth camp, it's still early in the year. You need to call the Galilee Baptist Church, call Pastor Andy Wells, and talk to them
Right.
about being a part of that tremendous ministry that the Lord has given them. Brother Andy's heart for young people, and then all of
We
that.
love it.
God kind of knitted our heart. Our pastor, our church has always had a
Absolutely.
heart for young people, and the Lord's put that in my heart, Brother Keith's as well. And so we appreciate their friendship down through the years. And today what we want to talk about is just serving your generation. Pastor, I recall last year, the Higher Grounds, at this time last year, the Higher Grounds podcast was just getting off the ground.
Right.
And you came to Love Valley. We did an episode. You interviewed me. We did an episode. And I remember during that episode, it come up about serving your generation in the book of Acts. And so I'm just going to turn it over to you and talk about different ways that we can. We may stop and ask some questions if that's all right. Different ways that we can serve our generation. And then if you wouldn't mind maybe elaborating on some of the things that you are doing, and then maybe there's some things that you're not doing but you think are needful. Maybe it's things that you are not able to do right now, or maybe don't have the resources or what have you, and talk about just serving our generation.
Well, I was, of course, I grew up in a good home and a good family. My dad is as fine a man as walks in shoe leather. And Dad pastored the Galilee Baptist Tabernacle in Newport, Tennessee for 40 years. He is now writing books and on the road in an itinerant ministry week to week. But I came up under the sound of the gospel from a very early age. And when I was about 10 years of age, I trusted Christ as my Savior and served the Lord there for a little while, best I could as a little kid. And and even the Lord began to really deal with me about some things in my middle teenage years, my upper teenage years up to my mid-20s. I had gotten away from the Lord. I've never gotten out of church, mind you, but I had, my career was driving me. Making money was driving me. Those kinds of things. I'd stay in church, but my heart wasn't there. And I remember I was on a business trip. It was in Athens, Tennessee, and I got right with the Lord in a motel room. And I remember saying to the Lord then, Brother Keith, whatever the Lord wants out of my life, that's what I'm going to give him. And for years, I really wanted nothing to do with ministry as far as preaching or pastoring or any of that because of, what I'd seen my dad go through as a pastor. And so, I figured, my greatest contribution could be, to make $1 million or $2 or $3 or $4 million, whatever, and try to aid and assist him financially in what he did. But that wasn't what God wanted me to do. And so I got right with the Lord there, and I said, whatever you want me to do. Within a month or two, God called me to preach. Wow. And truth is, within a year, I was pastoring my first church. And, it all began there. And it's been wide open ever since that time. And, of course, I was surrendered to preach in 1990, was pastoring by 91. And I've been serving the Lord in the ministry ever since that point in time. I was a bivocational pastor early on in my ministry. I'd work about 60 to 80 hours a week on the job and then visit when I could and study and preach 3 times a week, teach a Sunday school class, go pick up people and bring them to church, and, worked as a bivocational pastor for years. And it's been a joy to serve the Lord. It really has.
Preacher, let me ask you a question. I know that we're going to talk about how you're serving your generation now in a few minutes, but just to give a contrast, let's go back, I would say about 15 years. In the past 15 years, we have had an explosion in technology, if you will, from the social media aspect to everything that is available that you can do and all that's going on. But before that, up until then, so you had 15 years or so of being in the ministry, serving your generation during that time. What are the different ways that you think during that period, so you have basically 2 15-year segments where you're serving your generation. In those first 15 years, what are the ways that was common for a preacher, whether he was a pastor, a lay preacher, a youth pastor, a church worker, to serve his generation? What are some of the ways that you did that at that point?
Well, it wasn't a lot different really than it is now, as far as just the nuts and bolts of the ministry. The ministry is about people.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you don't minister to people in a digital fashion. You can give resources to people in a digital fashion, just like we're doing today.
Sure.
But as far as real, down-to-earth, true, genuine ministry, it has to be people one-on-one, face-to-face. And, that's what I did back in those days, just knock on doors, Go visit elderly folks, go to the jail, go to the prison, preach. Have young people at my home every Saturday night, minister to them in the place where they were. And those same things we still carry on to this very day.
Sure.
I thank God for technology. There's a lot we could say about technology in a negative sense, and it is duly and justly deserved to take the criticism that it should receive from us. And as a child born in the 60s, I hate it personally. I mean, as far as the technology is concerned, I'm not into you getting into my business and figuring out where I'm at and what I have for lunch and all those kind of things. It's stupid. But the fact...
Well, no, it's asinine.
That's one of the words we use because we have a thesaurus. But all I was trying to say was, I don't... But this is a resource that we use to reach more people.
Yes.
But if you... Reaching people and ministering to people are two totally different things.
Sure.
And we're reaching thousands of people. We're reaching thousands and thousands of people through our digital resources. But we're ministering to a whole lot less than that.
Yes.
And what is truly impactful for eternity is ministering to people, serving people, not just reaching people.
Right, absolutely. I would say, I know we talked about the nervousness that some pastors have, rightfully so, when you go to step into the age we're stepping into now.
Sure.
And you and I talked about this last year and have talked about it several times, that there were many podcasts out there, but none were like the ones that you folks do at Higher Grounds, that we do at Christian Construction. And if they were anything of a religious flavor, it wasn't exactly what we are.
Right.
And
right.
It was, matter of fact, it was probably a pretty good ways off from what we are, and leading even further away. So that being said, we understand that ministries and the way that we minister to people, or the way that we reach people, minister to people, may come and go, but the key is what you just said, ministering, reaching them, ministering to them by whatever the most available means is.
Right.
We said this, too, a while back, that somebody had to have the first bus ministry, somebody had to have the first radio ministry, somebody had the first television ministry, podcast, all
whatever.
that. Somebody had the first church website, that didn't say @juno.com. Everybody used to have those email addresses. So there had to be a first. This is just the newer way that we're doing things, so that eventually there will be something else come along.
Right.
Facebook's not going to last forever.
No.
You understand? And so we have to be willing to.
If it's up to me, it won't.
No, I've seen enough of it. So we have to be willing. While I'm not in favor of diving in after everything, I do believe that we have to figure out how to adapt. And when something has planted itself and says, we're here to stay, would it be correct to say you have to figure out how to adapt and utilize it in the right way, just like a telephone? Or
here's the bottom line. We're taking tools and making toys out of them.
Sure.
And all this is a tool. It's a tool just like anything in my toolbox is a tool. It has a purpose. And when you you can use a hammer productively, or you can use it destructively. You can take this resource and use it productively or use it destructively. It's up to you. And so we have to take and use what's there at the time for its value, for the glory of God.
Amen. Preacher, talk to us a little bit about, I know that you're involved or have been involved in the past in helping even law enforcement in your area.
Right.
You've even lent yourself to the political arena.
Right.
Letting God use the ability, the talent He's given you to try to literally help a bunch of liars.
That's about what it boils down to.
But
my
you've
life,
lent yourself to that.
Well,
so talk about the different ways that God has used you in those.
My life has been very unique. I've lived a unique life. And the things that I've gotten to do, places I've gotten to go, things I've gotten to experience, really I don't know many people that have. But one of the reasons for that is because my wife said it today. She said, you've always got to be doing something. And I said, well, that's how I'm geared. I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I go as hard as I can. At the end of the day, I collapse and get back up and do it all over again. and try to keep my body in good enough shape to where I can stand it in my 50s. But here's what I'm trying to say. Living the life that I live, I've got to go into places and be in things, I mean, that very few people have. I mean, I remember years ago when I was very, very actively involved in a particular, incarceration ministry, we'll call it that. Get that. That might be somebody on the telephone, Brother Keith. Tell them I'm busy and tell them for their people to get a hold of my people. What I remember sitting in a cell with a contract killer, and who had murdered a man who was a preacher. He had murdered a preacher. Wow. And he had been contracted to take this preacher out. And for some reason, he just took a liking to me. And every week, I was in his cell, locked in his cell with him, and just had extremely productive conversations with him, gave him the gospel, began to tell him about the Lord. There are very few people who have had that sort of experience. On the other side, been involved in law enforcement. There was, I had gotten to know a bunch of law enforcement officers, and there was one of our law enforcement officers that I had been in contact with that had taken his life. And when he took his life, I rushed to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital there, a lot of the department didn't know me. They were acquainted with my face, but they didn't know me. And I walked in and began to walk through those officers and put my arm around their neck. And when I walked out that day, those officers flocked around the chief of police and said, that man's got to be a part of our department. And it wasn't long before I was a part of the department, patrolling with them and ministering to their needs in a chaplaincy while patrolling with them. And I've been involved with several departments since that point in time. And one of the things that I've done is dealing with officers, debriefing them after shootings. Yeah. And just walking them through shootings. Just did that recently with some officers. And, that's a very difficult thing. Yeah. And unless you've been on the street, had shots cracked off at you and those kinds of things, you don't realize or understand what those men and women, for that matter, go through. And so that's a part of the things that I've done, been involved, in itinerant ministry, preaching all over the country. Sure. Studied a lot of stuff on God and American history, preached God and American history conference material around the country, being in Pennsylvania in a few weeks doing that. And then the Lord opened up, the political arena for us. And we started the We Stand With God rallies in response to the 2015 decision with the Supreme Court on same-sex marriage. It hit right at an election season. And we wound up, Brother Chad Watson, Brother Stephen Williamson, and I just decided to put a rally together. We thought that's what the Lord would have us to do. The thing just exploded. Oh, yeah. And the next thing we had Senator Ted Cruz with us, and Governor Rick Perry, and Governor Mike Huckabee, and
about 10,000 people.
And 12. We had 12,000 in one state, 10,000 in another. Yeah. The Lord allowed us to preach in front of the Florida State Supreme Court. Yes. In regard to RFRA, religious liberties legislation, and it passed while we were there. We were able to go into New Hampshire and just various other places. Yeah. And the Lord's allowed our paths to cross with a ton of people in regard to that. That being said, the next thing you know, we were in our local Republican Party in our county. We got involved there, a handful of us. And within a year, I was the chairman of the Republican Party there in the county in which I lived, and ran that for about a year, or it ran me, or I'm sure I was not the best one they've ever had. But with all of my scheduling and the things that we do and travel, recording for the podcast, and we're on the road with a podcast all of the time, doing interviews and things of that nature. Yes. It just got to be more than I could handle. I was helping Drew McKissick, who is the chairman of the Republican Party of the state of South Carolina, with faith engagement there. And so those are some things that I've done. I got a call yesterday about getting involved with some national ministries in this next election cycle. Don't know if I'll have the opportunity or ability to do that, but those are some of the things that I've done through the years. Pastored where I'm at, the Galilee Baptist Church in Monroe, North Carolina. I've been the pastor there I'm in my 19th year. Which is hard to believe.
Yeah.
And the Lord's blessed Beverly and I. Our kids were just tiny. My youngest was 4 when we moved there. Yeah. Our family was about like your family when we moved there. And, all the children are grown now, productive adults and farming and working and making money and serving in the church and faithful in church. And 6 grandkids. My life has really come full circle. I was telling my wife the other day, we've just been blessed, and our life has really come full circle, and the things we've got to see and do are just phenomenal.
Amen.
Ministering around the world, not just in a region or a state or a city, but literally ministering around the world.
Some people may watch us and maybe they've not watched any of the Higher Grounds. Tell us what y'all do on Higher Grounds.
Well, about a year and a half ago, I guess it would be. I was in prayer, really, and it's hard to say that you got mad in prayer, but I got mad in prayer, and the reason I was mad was not because of what was going on in prayer, but I don't know if I was complaining or murmuring or what I was doing to the Lord, but I was voicing my concern over some of the things that we see on social media that's being carried on perpetrated by, produced by Baptists, and I call myself an unaffiliated Baptist. I'm not a part of any group or any club or any organization or any college. I'm just me, and I like it that way. Okay, that doesn't mean that I'm an isolationist, but I'm just autonomous. Yeah. Well, I've been beginning to watch some of these guys that call themselves by they say they're autonomous, and the material that some of them were putting out was terrible. I mean, either the quality was terrible, or the material, the content was awful. And some of it was just flat stupid or asinine. And then others of the other parts of the content that were being put out was heretical. Some of it was just absolutely not true.
Absolutely, yeah.
And its reflection on those people and upon our God was just awful. And I was upset about it. Then I picked up some stuff that I guess still is, being written and produced by some folks that was very good. The quality was good. The material couldn't be argued with. It wasn't ankle deep, but it wasn't neck deep either. It was okay. There was you couldn't look at the material that was being put out, Brother Keith, and say, "Oh, this is terrible," because it wasn't. It was good stuff. Encouraging and good stuff.
Yes, sir.
But when you begin to search the guys out that's producing the material, and you begin to look at their personal lives via them broadcasting themselves through social media, the standard of living for them is what I would consider to be less than holy. And so I knew that they were having positive effects in young men's lives who are now going to go look at their life and say, so he lives that way, it must be okay because he's got the good stuff.
Yes.
That made me more angry than the other guys, okay? So Lord said to me, well, why don't you do something about it? I'm not the brightest crayon in the box, but I'm not the dullest either. I'm a pretty smart fella, and I've got connections with good people like Brother Robert Jones, who you've had on the podcast, and others who can help me. And I reached out to some of these people, and I said, let's put together a podcast. It's kind of new, but let's put together something that will be of professional quality that God can use to communicate truth from vessels that are trying to live holy and godly. And so the the success of the podcast in the last year has been phenomenal.
Yes.
It's been greater than I thought it would be. And the reception of people has been outstanding. And so what we're doing is just trying to continue to keep that together. I've had Brother Michael Poindexter helping me kind of co-host, as some of your guys do with you, and I've had Brother Stephen Aldridge. And, our schedules, these two men are coming into their own as preachers. And as they're coming into their own, their schedules are getting to where sometimes they can be with me, sometimes they can't. So Brother Matthew Tucker is filling in for them, like Brother Keith is for you. And it's just been tremendous.
Amen.
I mean, God's blessing it.
Amen.
Yeah.
Preacher, I sure do appreciate your time. And again, we've already mentioned too, not to mention, on top of everything else, the teen camp ministry, all of that goes on.
Thousands of kids.
Absolutely.
Literally, thousands through the years have been ministered to.
And that didn't just start when you started pastoring. You were doing that before you were ever pastoring.
Yes.
You were doing the ministry in that regard. So.
Yeah, and just hey, shameless request right here.
Go ahead.
The youth camp business is business. I'm from South Carolina. Business. Youth camp is very close to my heart because God did a work in my heart in youth camp. Okay,
Yes.
And literally we've had thousands of children that have come through the Galilee teen camps through the years.
Yes.
We're now ministering to young people we're having camps now for young people that are 18 to 30,
Yes.
We're having camps for preachers' kids.
Yeah.
We're having camps in the wintertime. And, through the years, we've had difficulties in dealing with our local health department, and, we've had to arrange things and rearrange things, and it's been difficult. And my son came to me yesterday, and he said, I want to approach you with a property. I want you to see this property. And so my wife and I today rode down and looked at a property that we're going to begin praying about, 121 acres. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's got all of the facilities. The bunkhouses are there for the children, swimming pool, rifle range, pistol range, ball fields, climbing walls, dining halls, residents on the property. And, I need $500,000. That's what I need. I need $500,000. And if one of you fine individuals out there wants to invest in young people and have a everlasting reward in heaven, and you could help us out with that, we're praying about it. And you have not because you ask not. And I'm asking if anyone out there would be interested in helping us out with that project. We're going to begin to pray about it. We want the will of God. We don't squander or waste, but we want to help people. Sure. And if there's anybody out there who would like to partner with us, we just want to give that shameless plug to that.
Amen. It is a worthy cause. It is a worthy cause. The youth camp ministry, I fear that in the years to come, it may be a fading ministry. I think we have a responsibility.
Yeah, not if I have anything to do with
to
it.
Keep it alive and to always try to have something. The devil's always going to have something.
Always.
So we need to have something, not just because the devil has something, but because it's just right to have it.
Right.
And when you've seen the life-changing things that happen at youth camp and in youth meetings and things like that, it encourages me, makes me want to keep going, and it makes me want to be a part of what the Lord's doing in that area.
Amen.
All right, Brother Keith, anything else?
That just a comment on that youth camp. I think about some of the things that the Lord's done in my life. Most of y'all know my background and my testimony. I don't have that where I can go home and I don't face the same pressures that we face in the world at home.
Right.
To go to camp and those pressures be alleviated for that week. You don't have your cell phone. And it's just you and a bunch of your peers.
Right.
And the Lord.
And it is amazing what the Lord does in your heart when you do take a step back from those pressures. So it is a ministry from somebody that has been there.
Amen.
Growing up in that youth camp. It is a ministry worth investing in. Sure. I think about the work the Lord's done in my heart over the years at Galilee Baptist Youth Camp, and it's most of the reason why I'm here. It is. So that's all I have.
Amen.
Well, just remember, you don't have to use that I anymore. It's silent. I wouldn't even use it when you're spelling your name going forward. And Melvin, thank you for allowing us to do that.
All right. Well, we appreciate you tuning in today. and hope you'll tune in again next week here on the Christian Construction Podcast.
Higher Grounds Podcast. God bless, friend.
Bye-bye.